Okay, folks, so let's get into this webinar. As I mentioned, this is a webinar, so if you have any examples, please pop them into the chat. Any questions, I'm going to be stopping, just like that, periodically throughout the webinar to ask you to think about things or some questions, and you don't have to put an answer into the chat, but I'd love it if you did. Okay, so folks, let's have a look at this word, loneliness. Okay, so it's the state of being lonely. Okay, so it comes from lonely. Okay, that word originally just comes from lone, the state of being lone, like the Lone Ranger. There's a guy on his horse fighting against all the Indians, and he's the only guy, like in old cowboy times. But actually the word lone actually came from the English word alone, and this word, believe it or not, comes from two words, all and one. Okay? So the word alone comes from all, one. So it's just one person in one situation, there's nobody else around. So that's basically where the word comes from. All, one, alone, the state of being on your own. So typically when we talk about loneliness, we're talking about a situation where a person doesn't have enough people in their company. Maybe they have a situation where during the week they're very extroverted and very apparently happy and enthusiastic and talkative, but then when they go home they just shut down. The whole social thing closes down and they feel very alone with no companion, no friends, nobody really to hang around with. And that's essentially when we're talking about loneliness, and it's become a big thing in the last year or 2 years with the pandemic, because people have been so restricted from communication that it's become a big issue. Okay? Now, when we're talking about loneliness, the feeling that goes along with it is the idea that being on your own is a situation where you're no longer with the person that you used to be. You're no longer in the group that you used to be in. And you're having thoughts of the people that used to be but now aren't. The game you used to play but now isn't. The group you used to be a part of but now it's gone. So it's all kind of into that, plus a restriction in your own self and your own mind about getting through it and getting out there. Okay? So when we talk about loneliness, the biggest effect and the biggest problem that this issue causes is a restraining of yourself from going out and doing things, getting things done, getting activities done, and also going out there and communicating, building relationships from a group perspective and from a one-to-one relationship perspective, from a romantic relationship perspective, all these things. Because essentially life is lived with people. When you are feeling lonely, you will look for substitutes, and those substitutes often take the form of cats and dogs, birds, and all sorts of different things. So it's fine to have lots of physical things around you, lots of animals around you. And don't get me wrong, I love having animals around. I've got cats at home, I've always had dogs and so forth. In fact, if I could have more, I would. More cats and dogs and birds and a couple of cattle and maybe, a few chickens. That's not to say I want to become a farmer tomorrow, but I love having lots of animals around. But even when you've got lots of animals around, that's fine. There's still going to be something missing. And that something missing is the human interaction, is the human connection. Life is lived with people. Okay? Life is lived with people. It is not lived on your own. And that is not to say you cannot have satisfaction or enjoyment on your own, but life, it is true that you can actually have periods of being happy on your own. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're talking about life, we're talking about other people. We're not just talking about animals, plants, work. We're talking about people. So that's what the biggest problem is with the loneliness is the lack of connection with people, and you are going to feel it. If you're experiencing loneliness, there's a gap. People can bring you flowers and give you animals and, get you a new television and a new couch and a new car, and that's all very fine. But if this added ingredient of people is not added, there is going to be a gap and you are going to feel it. So that's the problem, and that's what the main issue with loneliness is. Now, before we go into the tools that I have for you, I've got 2 tips for you that will help you, and one thing which causes you to not be able to apply the tips that I'm going to give you. Okay? So, bear with me. So we're going to have a look at the effects of loneliness, and what I would like you to do, as I'm writing these down, I would like you to add into the chat what effects loneliness has on you or somebody that you love. Okay? I've put down a couple more that I prepared before the webinar, so I'm going to just pop those on the board. Okay? So we're looking for a start at effects of loneliness. Okay? Okay, so let me just pop down here, and you can please pop them into the chat as you're going along if you think of one. Okay? So, effects, sadness. Okay? Person who is feeling lonely is going to usually go downhill into a very sad feeling, and then that's going to affect the next one, which is no motivation. Okay? And what's going to happen there is then you're going to get into unhealthy life patterns. Okay? And what I mean by that is, instead of reaching out to people and doing things, once these start to kick in, these unhealthy life patterns are, eating more than you should, watching way too much television, too many episodes of Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever it is. It just leads to unhealthy life patterns where you get into this procrastination and things build up in your house. The spare room gets even fuller and fuller. That's what are the effects that loneliness can have. Now, could you please, this is your first exercise of the webinar. I'd like you to add to this list, please. What other effects does loneliness have on you or somebody that you love? Okay? So if you can pop them in, and anxiety and depression. Okay, Paul, anxiety. Let's just pop these in here as we're going along. Good, thank you. Anxiety, yeah, we have depression, sadness, same kind of thing. Okay, thank you very much. What else? That was Paul. Thank you, Paul. Mbule, I love your name. Anger. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because when people are in all the time, it's like life is meant to be lived out there. It's not meant to be just in a box. And so it can be very, very, very frustrating. And it can kick in a whole load of things, as we'll go over in the next part of the webinar. Thank you very much. What other effects do we have? Anger. Focus on my insecurities. Kathy, thank you very much. That's a really good one. Insecurities. Yeah, because when you're on your own, because there's no human connection, or there's not enough human connection, you tend to go inwards a bit more, look inwards. Why am I like this? And why can't I talk to people? How long is this going to go on? And why was I born this way? And, all this type of stuff. These things can kick in. So thank you very much, Kathy. That's very good. Withdrawal. Ellie, that's a very good one as well. Thank you. Just pop it in a different colour. Withdrawal. Yeah. Okay. Not going out with people, not socialising, not making an effort, and just kind of staying inside and trying to live life without people, which is very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Okay, thank you. Sadness, we have that. Insecurity, Mbula, thank you. Feel small and like, why am I here? Again, that would be probably in the insecurity. Thank you, Ashling. No will or fight left, no will. So that would be motivation. No motivation or fight. Yeah, okay, I like that one. No motivation or fight, definitely. Because once it starts off, it's like a snowball effect, whereby you're not around people and you just go more and more into yourself, and more into yourself. And it just gets worse, basically. Okay. Nowhere else. Eugene, isolation, yeah. And this is one that's very common these days because honestly, people haven't been used to loneliness. In the last 2 years, it's people who were never lonely are all of a sudden lonely because of the restrictions and so forth with the COVID and all that. But isolation has become a big part. And even outside of that, a person can become very isolated. We'll go into the reasons for that shortly. Loss of self-worth. Thank you, Joanne. Okay. Self-worth. Okay. Let's go on here. Good one. Very good. Self-pity. I love that one. Yeah. What can I do about it? And so forth. Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much, Eugene. Shut out. Yeah, that's the withdrawal thinking. Thank you so much. Stress level. I like that one as well. Stress. Yeah. You're in four walls. It's not going to be all plain sailings after a while. You can only watch about 3 or 4 hours of movies until you start to go slowly bananas. I've tried it. It's difficult, you know. Okay. Stress, easily offended. Yes. So, okay. So, touchy. Let's put in touchy. Yeah. Touchy. Easily offended. Lack of confidence. I like that one. Confidence comes down. Okay. Yeah. I can see how that could be. Lack of confidence. Yeah, because once you get into the rut of not going out and feeding that loneliness, it is something that your ability to go out there tends to go down and down. So it's a good one. Neglect, yes. Not meeting potential. Very good. I like that one. Neglect. And then loss of potential. But it's not really loss of potential. It is really neglect of potential. So that's a really good one. Thank you so much. Okay. So these are all the effects. Thank you very much, Galib, and everybody for participating. I really, really appreciate that. Okay. So now, folks, I'm going to give you 2 tips. Now, as a coach, usually what I try to do is give people some information that they can apply on an immediate basis. And what I'm going to give you here is going to help you if you apply it. Okay? The reason I have a 3rd section is because there is something within you that stops you from applying good recommendations. And we're going to go into that shortly. Okay? So now, the very first thing I have is from, and by the way, I should have told you this at the beginning. This webinar is based off this book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health. The Modern Science of Mental Health. It was written by this gentleman, Elman Hubbard, and this is a free introductory webinar to a 4-part online course that I'm going to tell you more about at the end, which I do to help people in their lives, okay? Now, I forgot to introduce that because I wanted to tell you there's another little manual that he wrote called The Way to Happiness, and this is a little section from that. It's from a chapter called Be Industrious. Okay, so these are all the effects. We're going to get rid of all those effects right now. I'm going to wipe the slate clean. So now we have a clean slate. Excellent. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at the effects. We'll just put this up here so you can follow through what we're rolling here with. Okay, now this one here is Be Industrious. Okay, now definition of industrious. Let me just get you that. Basically, getting things done actively. Okay? It's the opposite of being idle, doing nothing. The opposite of being idle and doing nothing is being industrious. What else we have? Applying oneself with energy to study or work, actively and purposely getting things done. Okay? So this is Be Industrious. I'm going to read to you a little section from this book, which is absolutely beautiful, and you can apply this on an immediate basis, and it's for sure going to start lessening that loneliness here. Okay? So here we go. This is from the little chapter in the book. Sorrow itself can be eased by simply getting busy at something. Morale is boosted to high highs by accomplishment. Now, morale is basically your confidence, your enthusiasm, and your discipline at a certain point in your life. So, for example, if you have a group with very high morale, their confidence is high, their enthusiasm is high, and their discipline is high. If their morale is low, their confidence is low, their enthusiasm is low, and their discipline is low. Take a football team, and you can see the ones with high morale and low morale, those ingredients are either in or out with those things. So morale is boosted to high highs by accomplishment. In fact, it can be demonstrated that production is the basis of morale. Okay? Now what is production? Production is completing something. Okay? So production is completing something. Okay? Completing something. The act of completing something, finishing a task, a project, or an object that is useful or valuable or simply worth doing or having. Okay? So production is getting something done that's valuable. It's worth doing, it's worth having. Okay? That's production. Ideally, it's something that you can do that has a value to somebody else. But it can also have a value to you too. So for example, if you got yourself busy doing a painting, and you made a beautiful painting, and you were the only one that saw it, well, it would still be production because it's value for you. But it would be even more production if it was given or shown to somebody else. Okay? People who are not industrious, or who are lazy or idle or not working, dump the workload on those around them. They tend to burden one. It is hard to get along with idle people. Aside from depressing one, they can also be a bit dangerous. For example, if somebody's not working and not active and so forth, they're more likely to make mistakes, leave the kettle on, leave the eggs burning in the kitchen. And if there's somebody around you that's not active and that's not busy, it can cause you to go down into that feeling as well of, low morale. It can have an effect on you. If you've got somebody in your life who is not working, who is not active, who is not busy, who is not working with purpose, it can definitely have an effect on you. So if you have somebody in your life like that, read this quote to them. Okay. A workable solution is to persuade such to decide on some activity and get them busy with it. The most lasting benefit will be found to arise from work that leads to actual production. Okay? So for example, you're feeling lonely, you don't want to go out, you're starting to think about yourself, you're going into yourself, you're feeling insecure, angry. Well, number one, get busy at something. Pick a project, something that you have left incomplete, and try and finish it. So if you have started painting the back wall, finish painting it. But it doesn't matter what you get busy at really. Painting your nails, painting the house, bringing the dog for a walk, doing an online course that you've wanted to do for a while. Get busy at something. Maybe you can't tackle the spare room right now because there's just so much stuff in it that it just drives you mad even thinking about it. But what you could do is maybe tidy down the kitchen counter or mow the grass. Okay? So, the first tip for loneliness and isolation is to get busy at something and complete it. Get busy at something and complete it. And that will immediately start just to take your mind off it so that you'll be more willing and able to do the next steps, which I'm going to get into right now. So, my next ask of you is this. I'd like you to think about a project that you have not completed. Something that you started that you have not completed that you would like to complete. So just think about something that you have not completed that you would like to complete. And if you don't mind popping it in the chat, that would be great. Whether it's a course, a book, painting the house, cleaning the kitchen, bringing the dog for a walk, bringing the cat for a walk, learning about poetry, starting a business, going and helping people in your community. What is a project that you have started but you haven't finished? Just think about that for a moment and please pop it into the chat and then let's move on to the next bit. Okay? So just think about an example of something that you would like to complete in your life and pop it into the chat. So just give you a moment to do that and then we'll move on. Okay? On a flight through these, Eugene, thank you. Straight off the bat, going back to exercise and yoga. Brilliant, Eugene. Okay, so it's been probably put on the long finger, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I need to get back into this. I need to actually achieve the goal that I started. If you just did something to work on that, that loneliness is going to start lifting immediately. Thank you, Eugene. King, doing a course. Brilliant. Restoration, that's fantastic. Doing a study course, nothing wrong with it. And being on the webinar tonight is good. It's part of that. And being on online webinars is fantastic, especially if they're live. When you're just looking at a recording, it's so easy just to press stop and then come back to it later and you forget about it. Okay, course, thank you. Restoration of local ancient wealth site. Kathy, lovely. Lovely idea. And lovely thing to get finished. Imagine what it's going to be like when you finish. Kathy, thank you. Jacqueline, event planning course. Beautiful. So, you either started or you didn't, but you'd like to finish it. So get busy doing it. Just do something on it. And if you've parked it, then just go back a little bit, see if there's any words that you passed by you didn't fully understand, clear them up, and then you'll be moving along nicely. Paul, postgraduate course, fantastic. Good stuff, Paul. Finish applying for a job on the internet. Good, yeah, because in order to get the job, you have to finish applying for it. So good, get that application form finished, Joanne. Thank you. Lisa, running, brilliant. Yeah, and the first step to do that is deciding, okay, you know what, I'm going to go out for a run. Not easy always to get into that frame of mind, but do it. Buy the Dianetics book. Barbara, music to my ears. Thank you. We'll tell you more about that at the end anyway. Enrolling in my nursing course. Mbole, thank you so much. Yeah, fantastic. Something that you've wanted to do. Get going and get busy on it. So it's a very, very simple thing. Pick something that you have wanted to do, some project, anything, even a small thing that you've wanted to get finished, and get it finished. When you get it finished, you're going to feel a boost. It just happens. You're going to feel a boost. You do more, you feel another boost. And then you're going to be able to move on to the next step. Okay? So that's the first one. First tip, okay? Next tip. And this is something that you have been expecting, I'm sure. Expecting Vincent to say. And that is this one. Communication. This communication is the key thing that all people who are feeling lonely or are affected by loneliness have in common. Communication. Something to do with communication. A problem communicating with a person. A problem communicating with other people. A problem getting to know new people. A problem saying what's on your mind. A problem getting out there. That is normally what everybody holds in common. And this is a little line from a little manual I pulled up called A New Slant on Life. Just another little manual that he wrote to help people. Communication is the solvent for all things. What does that mean? A solvent is something that dissolves something. Okay. So for example, if you're painting and you put thinners basically dissolves the paint, makes it much lighter. Communication is the solvent for all things. It dissolves all things. Communication is the solvent for all things. It dissolves all things. So, there's you, okay? And there's a problem that you don't want to look at here, okay? Maybe it's an upset with somebody. Maybe you've had this argument with your boss, and since 6 weeks you're not talking to each other because there's the elephant in the room there. You don't really want to talk about it. But it's sitting there, you're not looking at it, your boss isn't looking at it, but it's sitting there. Communication is the solvent for all things. So, by ignoring it and by just leaving it there, it stays there and it gets more and more solid and gets worse. But once you start flowing some sort of communication, okay, that is going to dissolve. In other words, it is going to disappear. Communication dissolves things. So, if you have an argument with somebody, or you haven't spoken to your dad in a year, or you have a son and you haven't spoken to him in a while, well, how do you solve that? Because you feel like you should be in communication. Communication about something. Just communicate. If they won't accept your calls, or if you don't feel like you can call the person, or you don't feel confident enough about calling, send them a text. Send them an email. Send them a Facebook message. And this is why people get joy out of posting things online, because they're communicating. They're communicating, you know. I'm not a great fan of scrolling all day long, but I do think it's therapeutic to communicate, especially if you are not the kind of person who is easily able to go out there and talk to people one-to-one. Doing it on Facebook and these places is very, very good, in my opinion. But whatever way you like to do it, get the message out. Okay? So if you don't feel like talking to a person, you're feeling lonely, God, you've nobody to talk to, you've nobody to hang around with, your good friends, well, then just send a message out. You know, think of something that you'd like to say to somebody, try and keep it positive and friendly, and send it off. Why not? Just do it. Send off the communication, get the communication line going. And then you'll hear back from them, then you'll communicate back and forth, and before you know it, another person is alive in your life. And then this thing about having people around you to live with starts to become alive. So then you send out a communication to somebody else. And then all of a sudden, there's a bit of back and forth going, and there's another person that you are alive with in your life. And you're going to feel it. Because without these people, there's a big gap. And that gap is the loneliness. That's the loneliness gap. But once you start filling it with people that you actually like and care about, I mean, you do have a choice on who you want to communicate with. You don't have to communicate with somebody that you don't want to communicate with. But you have the right to communicate to somebody that you do want to communicate with. Send them a message, write them a letter, send them a card, you know, send them a text, call them up, call around to their house. If it's allowed. That is key. Now, I don't want you to write down an example here, right? But I just want you to think about this. I want you to think about somebody that you could get in touch with. Somebody that you would like to get a connection going with. And work out what you could do to get that communication going. And it doesn't have to be a 4-hour phone call or turning up at the person's house with a plate of cookies. It could be just sending them a text, a voice message, a birthday card, anything. Get that out. And the more communication you do, the more communication you're going to get back in. And before you know it, you're alive again. Even if that person is not there with you in the house, they're there in your environment. So get the communication going. It is going to help you. Okay. Now, I told you at the beginning I would give you 2 tips. These are the 2 tips. Get busy doing something and communicate. In some way, shape or form. Do anything. Get something going. Now, I told you that there's also a problem here. And this is the point of my webinar tonight. So Vincent can tell you till the cows come home, hey, all you got to do, what's great, all you got to do is just be industrious. Get busy doing things. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, right, Vincent, you want to see the state of my spare room, it's huge. Or I don't have time. I'm too tired. Or if you had 4 kids, Vincent, you wouldn't be saying that. Communication. Vincent, that's a great idea. But honestly, I've heard that so many times. Every time you turn on Facebook, someone will tell you to communicate. So, these are useful and they do work. But why is it that you don't apply it? Because sometimes you wake up and you're in the mood for communicating. And you're in the mood for getting things done. But sometimes you're just not in the mood. You're just not in the mood. You couldn't be bothered. Or you feel more insecure today than you did yesterday. or you feel more introverted today than you did yesterday. You feel more stressed and you feel more angry, or there's a whole load of things kicking in on you personally and how you feel and what you think that causes you not to do anything. And then the problem just grows. Now I'm going to tell you the source of the problem. I'm going to tell you exactly what's causing it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying your own company for a period of time. But life is lived with people. And if you don't have associations with people in life, to that degree, you're not living to your full potential. You need communication with people, with the people that you want to communicate with, and expand it. Why not? I'm not saying you have to have 50 friends that you have to share around with on, all your time, but you can have as many friends as you want. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what is ruining the whole thing. Okay? I want to tell you what's ruining the whole thing. Okay? Okay, I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. I'll pop them in here because I need more space, as you will see in a minute, because when I start drawing my matchstick men, they go all over the place. Okay, so we want effects, get busy, and number 3 is communicate. Okay? So folks, if you just get on doing a few of those things, it's going to help you immediately. Okay, so what's the biggest problem here? The reason why you feel insecure, you get stressed out, you lose your temper, you this, you that, it's not just because you're locked in and you have a communication problem. It's not just that. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. And so I promise you matchstick men, and I deliver. I deliver the matchstick men. Every day you are learning new things from your observations in life, and you're storing all that information. And this is what we call the mind. And the mind is not the brain. Let's not get into a whole deep discussion about the things in the blob of meat that's inside your skull. Okay. I'm not a fan of that theory, as you might have guessed. You have a huge potential. You have a fantastic ability to store information and to come up with really, really good solutions. So when your mind, or your storage, like your own personal computer, is in really good condition, if your mind is in good condition, your thoughts are going to be in good condition, and your emotion is going to be in good condition. Okay? And you are going to be motivated to get things done and to communicate with other people if you're thinking clearly. And I'm going to tell you something now. This is not something that you would have learned in school, but it is true. There is a part of your mind which can work against you. And in Dianetics, we call this the reactive mind. Okay? Why is it called reactive? Because it's push button. I'm going to read to you the exact definition of the reactive mind from the Dianetics book, from the guy who wrote this book, because it's accurate and it's important to know what you are carrying around with you, and why it is that you cannot shake the loneliness. What you're carrying around and why you can't shake it. So I'm going to just make a bit of space here so I can write in these definitions. The reactive mind is that portion of the mind which files and retains physical pain. Okay? Physical pain. It files and retains physical pain. So in other words, if you fell off your bike and banged your head on the road, that recording is stored in this compartment here, which we call the reactive mind. If you had an operation, or you, I don't know, you fell off a small cliff, you know, or you were bitten by a dog, or you were bitten by a horse, or you fell off a horse, or you were thrown off a horse, that's what we call physical pain, and that is stored in the reactive mind. So that's the first thing. The reactive mind is that portion of the mind which files and retains physical pain and painful emotion. This is the next thing. Painful emotion. Now, what do we mean by painful emotion? We're not just talking about maybe a feeling of worry or nervousness. Yes, that can be connected, but we're mainly talking about loss. Loss of a friend, loss of a family member, loss of a job, loss of a child, loss of a pet, loss of a country because you had to leave it, loss of an opportunity, loss of your wallet, loss of your car, loss of your money, loss. So when we're talking about painful emotion, we're talking about loss and what goes with that, which is sadness, fear, anger, grief, but we're mainly talking about loss. So the reactive mind is that portion of the mind which files and retains physical pain and painful emotion. You're going to see how this relates to loneliness in a minute. I'm going to show you how it all connects. So let's not worry about how deep it's going into the mind here. Bear with me. It files and retains physical pain and painful emotion and seeks to direct the organism. Now the organism is just you and your body. Okay? This is the organism, okay? It's like you, your body and you, whatever way you want to call it, this thing that you're carrying around. Okay? It seeks to direct the organism. Direct means control. Okay? So it basically controls the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel. In other words, it can take that positive thinking and change it into a negative thinking, which also causes you to have negative emotion and then to react physically in a very negative way, or your actions and your behavior become negative. In other words, on Monday and Tuesday, you're very motivated. You say, I'm not going to be lonely anymore. I'm going to go for a run every day. And you're feeling happy. Great. Something triggers in your reactive mind. Your reactive mind directs the organism and affects your thinking, causes you to start thinking negatively. Oh, you know what, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. Why did I miss so many opportunities? I feel so stressed. All that stuff changes, and then your emotion goes down the tube, and then your actions and your behavior goes down the tube. But it starts with your thinking. Okay? So next bit. It seeks to direct the organism solely on a stimulus-response basis. Now let me just tell you what that means. Okay? Stimulus response. Okay? Now, the word stimulus comes from an old Greek word, and that Greek word is basically the word stimula, which basically was a cattle prod. Okay? So basically what that means is that the farmer goes out into his field of cattle and he carries a stick, which is a point on the end of it, and he hits the cow on the backside, and the cow, having been stimulated, responds. And it's an automatic response. When the farmer hits the cow on the backside, I love these examples because I grew up in a farming community, so I have experience on these things. When the farmer hits the cow on the backside, the cow does not sit there and think to himself, okay, what should I do next? What's the next logical course of action? Should I run, stay, think, ask the guy why he's hitting me? Should I eat more grass? No, he just automatically runs. So it's stimulus, response, automatic reaction. So, for example, you might have a time if you're afraid of flying, you get into an airplane, okay? So being on the airplane stimulates an automatic response, which is you getting nervous. That's called stimulus response. The stimulus gets the automatic response, and it's not something you're in control of. So stimulus response just means push button. Okay? For example, you hear somebody scraping a pot. Okay? That's the stimulus, and the response is you get this feeling like, ah! That's the automatic response. So that's stimulus response, or push button, or automatic action. Okay? So I'm going to read this sentence to you one more time, and then I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and then I'm going to ask you for an example. The reactive mind is that portion of the mind which files and retains physical pain and painful emotion and seeks to direct the organism solely on a stimulus response basis. Basically means push button. In other words, it controls the person on a push button. So, if you've had bad experiences in your past, they're usually buried. But all it takes is something similar to happen in your environment again to trigger it off automatically, and it affects you without your permission. In other words, the reactive mind is a part of your mind which is not under your control. It is not under your control. Okay? And it's purely push button. Now the very last sentence here, it thinks only in identities. Okay? It thinks only in identities. Now what does that mean? What identities means is one thing is the same as another. Okay? So for example, when I'm looking at these two pens, right? This is a green pen and it's in my right hand, and this is a blue pen and it's in my left hand. Now I can think logically about that. I can see the differences, and I can see that they're similar. They've got similarities, but they're different. Okay? The reactive mind doesn't think like that. It thinks that pen equals that pen. There's no difference. So here's the way your reactive mind thinks. Anything equals anything, equals anything, equals anything, equals anything. So it doesn't see the differences between things. So for example, if you were bitten by a dog when you were 5, all it takes is a similar dog to pass you by, and the reactive mind is trying to steer you away from pain, so it reacts and pushes you in a different direction and starts causing your thinking to change. So you could say that the reactive mind was a sort of like an animal mind which is designed to protect you, but it doesn't think logically. So let me give you a couple of examples of this and how it applies to loneliness. And if anybody has any questions, by the way, do you have any questions? Is everybody still there with me? Are you still there? Could you give me a thumbs up? Let me know if you're still alive. Mabula's alive. Lisa. Paul, you're there. Ellie. Joanne. Barbara. Okay, anybody else? Eugene, you're still there? Good. Galib. Practically everybody's there. Fazel, you're there. Danish, you're still alive. Kathy. Glad to see it. King, Galib, great. Okay, look, I usually check these things because sometimes I just get so enthusiastic about this. I just keep going and going and going. I forget about the crowd, you know, and that's not good. So, I'm glad you're all here. The basic summary is this. There is a part of your mind which you are not in control of. It is designed to steer you away from pain. The problem is it doesn't think logically. It just sees something in your environment, and if it looks in any way, if there's any similarity at all, it's going to steer you in a different direction. So let me tell you how this applies to loneliness, okay? I wrote these examples down, just made them up, okay? So you were part of a football team, but you had a bad injury, and it meant you couldn't play football again. So here's how your reactive mind thinks. Football equals pain, equals loss, equals players, equals team, equals goalpost, equals open space, equals any open space, equals sunshine. It's absolutely bananas thinking. It's bananas. But there's enough ingredients in that package so that if you meet any of those ingredients again in present time, like players or people or opportunities or games. Your reactive mind tells you, that's dangerous, stay away. And you don't know what's going on. All you know is you want to stay at home, you don't want to go out. Okay? Another example. Let's say you fell in love. You loved somebody with all your heart. You're going out with a fella for 5 years and it's going really, really well, and you're hoping he's going to get down on his knees one day, pop the question with the ring, and it's going to be, bliss. It's going to be absolute bliss. Okay? But one day, he comes home from a party and he's home late, and you're wondering, why is he home so late? And he wants to sit you down and he says, Mary, it's not you, Mary. It's not you. Seriously, Mary, it's not you, it's me. And that's the end of it. Massive, massive loss because of what you have invested into it. So it's a huge loss, and your reactive mind stores it all as a package. And here's how your reactive mind thinks. I just made these up, by the way, Okay. Boyfriend equals pain, equals love, equals loss, equals sadness, equals being on my own. So, you try to go out and you start a new relationship. Even the mention of the word love or that situation could potentially trigger off these losses again. And could potentially, in other words, what I'm trying to tell you is this. If you have had some losses in your past, your reactive mind is going to steer you away, without your permission, from things that it thinks are pain or are going to be painful again. So you try to get into a new relationship, but your reactive mind has a memory of a past bad relationship. So to the reactive mind, all men are the same. So you meet this new guy, can't be trusted. Of course, because he's a man. Or oppositely, a woman. It doesn't see the difference between the new guy and the old guy. It just tells you, be careful. People are bad. Don't trust people. Be wary, cautious, and skeptical. That's the best way to go. So, that's what your reactive mind is. It's a part of your mind that you're not in control of, and it affects the way you think, and it stops you from doing things that will get you out of loneliness, in other words, getting busy, and it will stop you from communicating, because your reactive mind will tell you, don't communicate with that person, or don't communicate with anybody. Just sit there and let it fester. Okay? Now, I'm going to ask you, because I need to drink some water now, because I've talked for ages. So what I'd like you to do is think of, and if you don't mind writing this down, I would be most grateful. I would like you to give me an example of something that you might see or hear or experience in life that triggers you. What are the things or what things trigger your loneliness or trigger you off or make you go back in again, where you're feeling great and all of a sudden something happens and it triggers you off? So what I'd like you to do is take a moment to type into the chat one thing that pushes your button and triggers off that loneliness again. Like, is it arguments? Is it hearing a certain song? Is it the weather? Is it I don't know, certain noises? So just give me an example of something that triggers you, presses your button and makes you react, that you're aware of, okay? Thank you. Here, okay, good. Focus on the past instead of now. Okay, we'll get into that in a minute, Jacqueline. Release the emotions of the past. Yes. How to get rid of it and stop it. Yes, we're going into that now in a minute. Getting ghosted. Aisling, I love it. Good example. Somebody ghosts you, pretends you're not there, just like doesn't even say hello, completely ignores you. Oh, it's a killer. Definitely. That's something that can trigger your reactive mind. Of course, if it's done deliberately, you could consider it's rude, but not only is that, but it also triggers off your baggage. So thank you, Aisling. Paul, confrontation, very good one, very popular one. You're doing very fine, everything's going really well, and then somebody is in conflict with you, and that has a bad effect. Thank you very much, Paul, Eugene, the past about ex-girlfriends. Good. So then I don't know, you're thinking about the past and then it brings it back again. So we're going to go into that in a minute. Thanks very much, Eugene. Time of the day when the sun goes down. Thank you, Joanne. Good. It could be as simple as that. The time of the day when the sun goes down, and that's enough. It's getting dark to bring it all back again, whereas you were doing great when it was nice and bright, and now it's not. Thank you. Jacqueline, lack of social circles have returned from 38 years overseas. Wow, okay, Jacqueline. Well, welcome back. Welcome back to Ireland, or wherever you are. And a lack of social circle is a very good example. Yeah, because you're kind of lacking those communication lines. But I can assure you, Jacqueline, that this doesn't help. This baggage that gets held doesn't help you to communicate more to others. Okay? Ex-partner presses the button. Popular one, Lisa. Thank you. King gossiped by a friend. Another great example. You know, when you hit into somebody who's being nasty, that is something that can definitely put you down. Thank you. Barbara, loss of husband, seeing couples together. Barbara, thank you so much. That is so important that you said that, because when you're carrying around these losses and you see somebody doing really well out there, it really is something that it's so close to the bone that this reactive mind just takes over and kind of can really affect your emotion, your mood, and your ability to communicate. Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Kathy, if I'm in a group and I have a conflict with someone and I need support and everyone ignores the situation and I feel I can't talk about it, brilliant. Again, conflict, interesting, isn't it? When you get that opposition, you know, you expect it to everything to go well, but then somebody launches into you, and that then sinks you back into yourself. So that's a really good one. Joanne, my son hasn't contacted for a few days. Very good. Yeah, lack of communication. Mairead, when I see someone with their mother. Okay, thank you, Mairead. All right, so you see somebody happy and it triggers off your pain. It shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't. Okay. Thank you very, very much, everybody. That is wonderful. Now, so let's just summarize this. So, handle the reactive mind. Okay. Now, Vincent, how do you do that? That's easier said than done. Sure, the past is the past. Let me get on with it. Grand, that's fine. Look, these are things that you can apply on an immediate basis. Getting busy and going out and communicate as best you can, okay? Now, this area of clearing the reactive mind is not something that one can completely communicate in a sentence, okay? What I mentioned at the beginning was that, and I didn't mention that I've been doing this for over 25 years and my purpose is to help people. What I have for you is this. This stuff, which I came across in 1992 in Munich in Germany, this stuff called Dianetics, shows you the exact 10-step procedure on how to find the buried stuff which is affecting your thinking. Because believe me, a lot of this stuff is, you don't even remember it. It's buried. Some of it you might to a certain degree, like losses and so forth, but a lot of this stuff is buried. So what Dianetics does is it shows you, and this is what my webinar is based on, and the modules I'm going to explain in a minute, that's what it's based on. It shows you how to find the baggage and clear it up. How to get rid of it for good. And when I say get rid of it, I don't mean get rid of the memory or the memory of the person that you loved. I mean the pain. Get rid of the pain, because that's the glue that is keeping this reactive mind stuck to you and keeps it constantly getting triggered in your present time environment. Because the problem is this, right? If you don't handle this, and if you just say, oh, you know what, it's going to be grand, I'll leave it until next week, sure, next month or next year, the problem with it is it grows. It grows. Why does it grow? Because every time it gets triggered, a new thing is added. And so it becomes even more difficult to do these points that I've told you, which are the steps to get out of loneliness. So that's why it's absolutely vital to get in here and clear the baggage. So now, it's coming up to 9 o'clock. And I'm going to be ending the webinar at 9, okay? And then I'm going to keep the webinar, well, I'm going to kind of end it, but not end it. I'm going to keep it open for any questions and answers. So anybody who wants to leave at 9, please feel free to do so. I'm going to be having some questions and answers. So people ask me, Vincent, what do I do next? And I'm going to show you what I referred to at the very beginning, which is the 4-part course that I deliver that I really would love to have you on. Okay, so let me just share this with you. And I'm going to just share this screen with you right now, okay? So this is the first slide, and this is what my course is about. So it's called The Mind Explained. It's an online course. It's on Fridays between 8 and 9, and there are 4 modules in total, and it's delivered on Zoom. And I personally deliver it on a Friday night between 8 and 9. So part 1, we explain what is the mind, what is it made of. You know, people are in often confusion about what the mind is, but the basic definition of it is very straightforward, okay? So that's the first part. We go into that and you learn a lot about what your potential is. Part 2. What is the real source of mistakes and irrational behavior? We really get in and dig deep to find out what is at the root of the problem. Part 3. In this part we go into losses and traumas, how losses and traumas affect you in life and why it's so important to clear them up now. Not next week, not next month, not next 10 years time, now. And part 4, we go into the solution. Okay? And the solution we go into is how to apply the basics of Dianetics. Like, they're all in the book. But in this module we go into the basic ingredients you need to have in place in order to make that procedure work for you. And I'll go into that solution with you. Okay, so to give you a little bit of insight, I deliver this course every Friday between 8 and 9. So when I finish on module 4, I go back and start again on module 1. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, back to number 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're interested and you enroll on this course tonight, for example, but you can't attend this coming Friday, don't worry, because you'll catch it the next time around, or indeed I can send you a recording of that particular module that you missed. I prefer to have people in there live, but if you can't, you can get a recording of it. Okay, so now let's move on. Some details about the course is on the next slide. So basically the Mind Explained course, 4 lessons, is basically €20, and that's for all 4 modules. The whole thing, €20 from start to finish. Okay? So the next one, it's based on the Dianetics book. Now, if you get the Dianetics book on its own, it's €20, and that's available in 50 languages, and it's got everything that you need to know. Everything I've gone over with you tonight, the main things are gone over in the Dianetics book. Okay, and the whole modules that I'm going to be delivering are based on that book called Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health. If you were interested, on the next slide I'm going to show you that if you're interested in doing the course with me, and I really would love to have you on it, on all 4 modules, the book goes with it. So basically, instead of €40 for the 2 of them, it's €20. So for €20, you basically get the book, and this is an actual paperback. There's 500 pages on it. It's the exact book I showed you. It's sent out to you with free shipping, and the Mind Explained modules are part of that. So the purpose of that Mind Explained course is to help you to understand yourself better, and to be able to help yourself and to help somebody else. That's the whole point of it, and it's the only reason I am here tonight, is to help you so that you can help yourself and help other people. Okay, so that's the course itself, and there's a link for it on the chat, and we're going to keep the webinar open after it finishes. It's going to end, but then it's not going to end. Okay, and so the phone number is going to be on the next slide. It's on the chat there as well. So if you're interested in coming for the webinar of the modules, then give us a call. The lines will be open till 10 o'clock tonight, or you can click on the link. Okay? Okay, folks, so thank you very much. So I'm going to finish off now. I hope this has been of benefit to you. To summarize, I mentioned that loneliness can have massive effects. The first step is to get busy doing something or completing a project that you want to complete. Communicate, send out a message, increase your communication, improve your communication. But then the key thing, the most vital thing to do is to clear up all this past pain that you're carrying around. Everybody's got this stuff. If you think, oh, you know what, it's grand, I'm fine, I'm active, I'm busy, I can assure you there's stuff there. Even if it's not affecting you now, all it takes is something similar to happen again to what happened to you in the past to trigger it all off again. Okay, so that's that. Now, for anybody who's any questions, I'm going to end off now, and you can hang on and you can pop any questions in the chat and I'll answer the questions. But if you don't want to hang on, it's completely fine. I will say good night to you. So I want to thank everybody who's joined us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Thank you very much for joining me and for giving me your time. And for everybody on Zoom, I want to thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for your examples. And let me just say hello and good night to everybody. Anybody who doesn't want to stay, it's fine. Thank you, Kathy, Agnes, Eugene, Paul, Barbara, Dinus, Lisa, Joanne, Galib, Ashling, Ellie, Fazel, Mabule, I'm so sorry, Mabule, Sinead, Flanagan, King, and Mairead. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here, for giving me your time. Have an absolutely beautiful rest of your evening. I wish you well, and I really, really hope you join me on Friday night to get this information. I will promise to take care of you, that you actually understand the information and that it's applicable for your life as well. Okay? So, I'll say good night to everybody. That's the end. So that's that. And now we're on question and answer time. Okay? So that's the end of the webinar. So anybody who wants to go, please feel free. I won't be offended. You can leave the webinar. It's totally fine. Okay? Because I said it was only going to be an hour. But anybody who has any questions, please pop your question into the chat, type away, and I will answer your question as soon as I have a drink of water. Lisa, you're welcome. Okay, everybody, I'm not acknowledging anybody here. Who did I not acknowledge? Joanne, glad you liked it. You're welcome. Fazel, Ellie, you're welcome. Barbara, you're welcome. Mahuli, you're welcome. Kathy, you're welcome. Lisa, you're welcome. Fazel, good night to you. You've probably gone already. Mairead, good night. You're welcome. Eugene, Paul, sorry. I think that's good evening. Okay, I hope it is. Lisa, good night. And Eugene, question 1. Okay, so anybody who's left there, you can ask any questions that you want in the chat. I mean, literally, you can ask anything. Anything. You can ask me, did I milk cows when I was working on the farm? You can ask me, did I ever cut a cow's or a bull's horn on his head? I didn't cut it, I watched it, but it was horrible, horrible experience. But I won't tell you that I hunted rabbits, because rabbits are cute. Okay, Kathy, how many Fridays is the course for? When you enroll on the course, you've enrolled for basically 4 modules, and you can take those 4 modules when it's convenient for you, and they're delivered every Friday night. Obviously, I like people when they enroll that they get through it as soon as possible. So it's 4 modules. The whole thing is €20. It includes the book, and it's delivered on a Friday night. So I would hope that you would come each Friday night for 4 Fridays, from 8 to 9 on Zoom. And if you can't make one of those Fridays, don't worry. You'll catch it the next time around, or I'll send you a recording, whatever you prefer. Yeah. How many Fridays? Okay. 4-week course. Yeah, it is a 4-week course. But as I said, if you miss one, you'll catch it because it's done on a rotational basis. And each module is just 1 or 2 things. I'll keep it very simple, lots of examples, and you can ask any questions, and it's usually a smaller group, so you can ask any more direct questions that you want. Sometimes when there's a larger group, it's hard to do that. Okay, so I hope that helps. Eugene, Barbara, Sylvia, you're hopping in there and answering me questions before I even get a chance to answer. Okay, is the course all in the book? Yeah, the thing is, it's based on the book, and Sylvia is actually right. The course is based in the book. There's a huge amount of information in the book. This is the book, okay? And when you get the book, there's 3 books in the book, and it explains to you all about how the mind works, the basics of the mind, and so forth. But in the webinars that we go over, I want to expand on the 4 key things that you need to know, and information is going to be able to help you to apply it in life and to be able to see how it relates to life. So it is based on the book, but there's a lot more to get and you'll find out that when you actually get rolling on it. Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Aisling, how did I get into this? Oh, good question. It's an interesting question. I was on my way to an Irish pub in Munich to have a few drinks of orange juice, maybe a bit more than orange juice. This was in '92. I went over to Germany to work. I was hoping to get a job in the BMW factory over there. And I was on my way down the street, and there was some guy there, and he introduced me to the subject. And this guy standing on the street, literally just standing on the street, promoting books and this kind of thing, So I basically got a copy of this book, and I thought, because at the time, I had just got myself a job. I didn't get a job in BMW. I got myself a job in another factory, actually, at the time. I was in college, so I was immediately interested. And the reason was because in college I had read several books about self-improvement, superpower memory. My study was terrible. I wasn't able to study very well, very shy, that kind of thing. So I was looking for something, actually, number one, to help other people, to be honest with you, to help others, because there was people that I knew and loved that I cared about that were not doing well. So I was looking for something effective to help other people. And this was the number one interest, and then number two was myself, actually. That was number two. So I got interested, I started reading the book, got through about 14 pages, left it down for a while, then followed it up again, started using Dianetics with others first, then tried it for myself, and realized this works. This gives stable results, and it's not just feeling good on a Friday, going back to feeling crap again on Saturday. It gives stable results, and it's not like what I loved about it was it really got in at the root. And when you clear up the root of any problem, bang, it's gone. It's handled, and that's what the book focused on. That's what I loved about it, and that's why I've stuck with it for over 25 years, because it works, and there's no other reason. And that's how I got into it. Hope to answer your question. It's a bit long and drawn out there, but I hope it answers your question, Aisling. Noted. Okay, good. Okay. Anybody else? If anybody's got any other questions, I would be very happy to answer them. You can pop them into the chat there and give me an opportunity for another drink. Okay, Aisling, can it be triggering? Can you elaborate on that, Aisling, if you don't mind? Can it be triggering? When you say can it be triggering, do you mean the course? Or do you mean, what exactly do you mean? Can it be triggering? Would you clarify that, and then I will answer your question. Kathy, is this a way of healing post-traumatic stress disorder? Basically, when we're talking about any sort of stress that comes after an incident, we are going in to get to the root, to get back to that incident. Now, I don't want to get into the whole detailed, specific, step-by-step to do it, but Kathy, it is definitely related to things that have happened in the past which have not been handled and which are constantly getting triggered by present time circumstances. Now, sometimes people tell me, Vincent, all I have to do is get rid of the triggers and these things won't trigger off. That's perfect. Great. However, all it takes is for you to move to another country and to move into the same situation again, or get into the same type of relationship again, or your relationship turns sour for a while to trigger the whole thing off. So basically, when we're talking about anything connected with stress, insecurities, frustrations, and uncontrollable emotions and desires and thoughts and irrational behavior, irrational thinking, all that type of stuff has a root in the reactive mind. And in Dianetics, it's a personal journey to get in there to actually clear it up. Because each thing is different for each person. It's not the same thing for every person. I'm trained in Dianetics myself, so when I'm helping someone with Dianetics, I'm helping them to find out what is in there for themselves. Because you don't really know, but what you do know is it's in there, and using the procedure of Dianetics, you get in there and you dig it up and you clear up the stress and the pain that is holding that person in that. So when we're talking about stresses and different things that are happening in present time, it's really what's happening is a constant triggering is going on, and it's often without you even realizing it. You don't know what's going on. All you know is you feel sad. And you think it's because you lost your dog last week, and maybe that's a factor. But the reality of it is the loss of the dog is often just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole load of other things sitting beneath that. So I hope that helped you, Kathy. And if you want me to clarify that, let me know. Aisling, can it be triggering as in going into the root of pain? Okay. The thing about it is, Aisling, is that if you don't go in and handle it, it's getting triggered anyway, without your permission. There are things affecting your thinking, things affecting your emotion on a daily basis without your consent, and you don't even know what's going on. All you know is you feel very frustrated today, or you feel very sad today, or you don't know what's wrong with you, or you don't know where you're going in your life, or all of a sudden you don't trust people. These kind of things are getting triggered on a daily basis. So when you start digging in here and clearing it up, I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's not always a walk in the park. It's not like daisies in the meadow, let's go in. Dianetics is not something that is a way of life. It's an exact way to get in and clear it up. But if you apply the procedure exactly, and we go over this on the modules that I do on a Friday night, if you apply the procedure correctly and you apply the basics that I give you, all right, it's smooth sailing. But it is a case that when you go in and start the stuff, you will re-experience stuff. But once you're using that stuff, you're going to be able to release it, okay, easily. So I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's all going to be roses in the garden, because it can be tough. But once you apply those basics, and this is something I'll go into in more detail, once you apply those basics, it becomes easier, and the more you do it, the easier it gets, okay? Because your ability becomes, you can become stronger and stronger and stronger the more of this that you do. Okay, so I hope that helps. Aisling, Barbara, is it about staying in the now? It's a really good question. People say to me sometimes, Vincent, all you have to do is just be in the present. Okay? Easier said than done. Why? Because this stuff is constantly pulling you back into the past. It's constantly pulling you back. So to answer your question, I can say yes, it is about that. But in order to get there, that has to be cleared. Because if it's not, what you have to do every morning is you have to go, okay, today I'm going to be in the now. And you have to repeat that to yourself all day. And try to be in the now, trying to be in the now. Whereas when this is cleared up, you are naturally in the now and looking at a future. That is the end result of Dianetics, a person who is being there naturally, without even trying, being there in today, able to look at the future. Why? Because they are no longer carrying the mother load. That's handled and that's cleared up. And that's what Dianetics is all about. Clearing that stuff so that it's not constantly pulling you, triggering you. Okay? Hope that helps. Kathy, what if it's a physical issue that is causing the sense of loss, but you have to confront it every day? Physical issue is causing a sense of loss. Is self-soothing and self-compassion important than the comfort sense of loss? Okay, so let me answer the first question. Okay, now, when a person... Okay, so as I mentioned, in here, there are recordings of physical pain, okay? Incidents that happened to a person in the past which caused them physical pain. Now, there's a chapter in the book, it's called Psychosomatic Illnesses. It basically means the mind making the body ill. Now that does not mean that the person feels pain in their arm because it's all in the mind. No, they actually feel a pain in their arm because there is a pain there. Okay? Roughly around 70% of when we're talking about things that can happen with the body have a connection with this reactive mind and past physically painful experiences. 30%, or probably even more, do relate to physical conditions. So this is not to say that physical conditions aren't having an effect. So if I have a hole in my hand, a big hole in the middle of my hand, Dianetics doesn't handle that. Dianetics does not handle that. Because it's a physical condition. Okay? Or if I was born with half a brain, a physically half a brain, that would be a physical thing. And that is something that is not what Dianetics handles. However, in that chapter of the book, Psychosomatic Illnesses, it explains that there's a huge amount of physical things that can go wrong with a person which are connected to this stuff here. And again, it's stressed in Dianetics that once you start clearing up this stuff, that situation can dramatically help a person, not only physically, but emotionally, and in terms of their enthusiasm in life. So I hope this, I've kind of gone around a round robin here, a physical issue that's causing a sense of loss. Yeah. There are two things stored in here majorly. Number one, physical injuries. So if a person has lost the use of a leg, okay, there is both stored here as a physical pain incident and actually a loss incident. So it's a kind of a combined thing. So, but in a Dianetics, you're going to be addressing both of those anyway, and even if you're addressing it as one unit, it can be addressed, for sure. Okay, you're welcome, Barbara. Is self-soothing and self-compassion important then to comfort a sense of loss? Right. Now, in Ireland we have a tradition of when somebody has lost another person, the tradition is at a funeral we go and comfort the person. And I personally think it is the most beautiful tradition that we have, and in European countries and wherever else they deliver this, because it definitely does help a person to have others around. Okay? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with compassion and help for somebody who has lost another individual. However, what you discover when you're reading the book and in the modules is that during a moment of loss, words that are spoken to a person during this very traumatic experience can get in there and get stored as things that can specifically affect a person's thinking later in life. So for example, if you lost a friend close to you, and while you're in a hugely tragic moment, your mother comes and says to you, you're good for nothing. Those words go in, and they can actually start affecting the way you think. Even if the mother wasn't saying it to you, maybe she was comforting you, but while comforting you, she said it to somebody else, those words still go in to your own reactive mind. And without getting into too much of the technicalities, because I cover this a lot in module number 3 on the Mind Explained course, you'll find out how it is that words spoken to a person during a moment of heavy loss can have a traumatic effect on that person later on in life. And I said there's nothing wrong with compassion, there's nothing wrong with being there to help a person, and it's encouraged. And I think it's a fantastic thing. It's just that, again, the way this reactive mind works is a trigger. So if you have a loss of somebody close to you, all it takes is enough similarities to happen in present time again to keep triggering it. Okay? So I hope that helps. Yeah, and Kathy, the one thing is, I don't want to give away too much, because on module 4, I kind of go into that question a little bit more about how exactly it's done. Okay? In more detail. So, hope that helps. Okay, folks, any other questions? You can pop them in there. Thank you very much. Great questions. And if you have any others, we'll keep it open for another couple of minutes, if you like. If anybody doesn't have any, sure, I'm going to just say one last thing, and then if there's no questions in the meantime, we'll wrap it up. I suppose growing up in the countryside in Ireland, up to the age of 13, 14, I was just like enjoying farming life and so forth, and going out there and being out in the fresh air and all this type of stuff. But there comes a certain point where you want to grow. And when I became a teenager, I definitely wanted to grow and learn about things and help people in life. I wasn't quite sure what my direction was. And when I finished college, I went into personnel management, which was a bit of a vague area for me because it wasn't really exactly what I wanted to do. And this is one of the reasons why I went traveling, because I was looking for something. And what I found was the coaching and individual one-to-one, which is what has become my passion. So when I discovered this, just like all the other subjects that I read about up to that point, I was looking for something workable. And I like theories. I like reading through Facebook posts sometimes where people are giving all these positive comments and advices and tips. And they're all fine. Except the reason I've stuck with this subject is because it really gets to the root of the problem and clears it up. And that's the most important thing, because once you've done Dianetics, it's done. It's not something that you have to keep doing. Once you've cleared the stuff, it's cleared. And that's it. So it's a handbook on how to clear up this stuff, and you'll find it very, very interesting when you get it. Okay, folks, so who's left? Kathy, thank you so much for being here. And Barbara, the last two standing, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your questions. I hope it's helped you in some way, shape or form, and I hope that you join me on the modules. And even if you don't, we'll see you maybe next time at another free webinar. So I will bid you good night. Thank you so much. Both Kathy and Barbara, have a beautiful rest of your evening. Okay? Bye for now.